Welcome back to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network. We're talking about healthcare IT in the federal service, and we're going over priorities right now. And I'm going to toss it over to you, Lisa. And you talked about a lot of different efforts, a lot of different activities going on over there. Give us your top 2 or 3 priorities for this year that you all are working on.
Well, thank you for the question, Luke. Of course, our priority continues to be interoperability and patient empowerment. I also want to note, though, that we are working diligently on the administration's priorities. COVID response and recovery, of course, continues to be a priority for us. I want to give my condolences to anyone who has lost loved ones during this pandemic and/or has been adversely affected in any way with your own health. You have my condolences, and thank you to all of our healthcare workers who have been working for over a year diligently, and all of the first-line essential workers as well. As far as our work in regard to COVID response and recovery, we are, as you know, responsible for making sure information flows, and we have recognized that we need to do more in regard to ensuring information is flowing from the public health agencies to clinicians and from clinicians to public health agencies. So that cycle is going to be an area of focus for us, making sure that that data moves and that everyone has what they need at the point of care, especially to ensure that if another pandemic occurs, and some people say that it's not if, but when, that we are better positioned from an information sharing perspective. We also are working on equity. And my boss, our national coordinator, Dr. Mickey Trapassi, talks about equity by design. And so we really are looking to ensure equity in every aspect of the policies and programs that we influence and that we implement. We are looking at equity, not just from the perspective of the healthcare system itself, but still for all of the trillions of dollars that we put into healthcare, the biggest determinant of someone's health and life expectancy is still their zip code. So we have to look at social determinants of health. So we are looking at that as an area of focus as well. And we continue to just push forward for standards-based approaches to health information technology in every area.
So important to this overall program. Pat, how about at your agency there? What's your priorities for this year?
So Genesis, obviously, and everything associated with that is first and foremost.
Absolutely.
However, I have 2 other things. So back to the way we were born, right? Army, Navy, and Air Force treatment facilities, each with different ways for how they bought technical support services. So technical skilled labor, those kinds of things. So overall, there's about 200 individual contracts out there for that purpose. We are replacing those 200 contracts with about a dozen. And the first is in source selection right now. So it's the MHS Enterprise IT Services contract. That first contract is very important. It will replace 6 contracts that are run out of my headquarters, and it will help us with award of the follow-on contracts. So a lot going on there. And the second is we run a 350-person global help desk that the sun never sets on. It's the number you call when you have a problem wherever you are in the world. The software that we used to run that, we're replacing. The go live for that is this coming Friday over the holiday weekend. And that's a really big thing. It will affect every single treatment facility in the Department of Defense. So that's a huge priority.
Fantastic, and real important to lay those contracts down so that you can execute cleanly. Bill, how about at electronic health records? Top priority for you this year?
Well, I'm gonna give you a couple.
Sure.
So when I talk to my team, we talk about operationalization and we talk about convergence. So those are fine words, but what do they mean to us at the firm and what we're trying to accomplish? From the operationalization perspective, I mentioned up front, the firm is here to be to bring together the work of the VA and the DoD on a single common federal health record. But you can't have 3 operators of that federal health record. You need you asked me about programs before, you effectively need a program manager, an operator, to bring all the pieces together and make sure that we effectively deliver that to those two departments, the U.S. Coast Guard, who is already using it, and potentially other healthcare providers in the federal healthcare enterprise. You know, we've had conversations with NOAA, we've had conversations with NSA, we've had conversations with the Indian Health Service, and I don't know if those will come to fruition, but I think we're poised as a firm and as a federal enterprise to offer capabilities that to smaller healthcare providers in the federal space that they probably couldn't afford, because DoD and VA have borne the upfront cost of creating this tremendous capability. So pushing that forward, being the single operator, pushing that forward, continuing to drive this is the convergence piece, the convergence between the DoD, the VA, and the Coast Guard from a functional and a technical perspective, so that we can make sure that we simplify and simplify the operations of the IT that supports the healthcare delivery, but also create as much commonality in the healthcare delivery side so that they're interoperable from a process perspective, as much as appropriate for those health systems. And I'm not a physician or a doctor or a healthcare provider in any way. I don't want to make those decisions. I want to enable them to make those decisions by taking the IT out of their decision loop. And the real priority, and I think kind of a demonstration or a prototype for much of this from a firm perspective, is the implementation and the planning for the implementation of the Federal Healthcare Center at the James A. Lovell Healthcare Center, which is a joint VA DoD facility in North Chicago. Getting that right, getting a synchronous deployment there, and the firm is leading that. I think that will be a prototype for what is possible from an health IT perspective to support integrated operations of two massive healthcare systems. And that's a huge priority for us in this upcoming year.
That sounds outstanding. Okay, well, we're going to wrap it up with this last question that we always like to ask, and I'm going to start with you, Nicholas. And it's about, what does the future look like? What's the demand signal that you're getting as an entity? What do you think the environment looks like 2 or 3 years from now?
Well, thanks, Luke. And I'll tell you, I think there's going to be a lot more gasoline flowing into Bill Tinston's data healthcare IT Bentley. I think that's really where we're trying to head to. And I think, during the last time we've been here, we've heard from several experts, the great things that are going on in the industry. We're going to see more of, to Tom's point, edge computing and edge processing. That stuff will be done in data centers closest to where the data is because of the sheer volume of those things. And then I think we'll also see collaboration on a global scale as well. I think that's what I'm most excited about. I love seeing the data derived from all of the diagnostics information and using that data to build better AI tools like the Captain TETTEH is building out. I think all of that is going to start really developing a lot of steam over the next, say, 12 to 24 months, especially as we come victorious from COVID. That is what I'm most excited about, just seeing the data get where it needs to go for not only diagnostics, but also treatment and making our lives better.
Again, meeting the patient where they are. I love that. Nick Psaki at Pure Storage. What's the future look like from where your vantage point is?
Well, and extending the comments of my estimable colleague, Nicholas SPEECE, we're going to see a tremendous increase in the scale of computing and scale of data growth, even greater capacity than we have in the recent past. And it's going to drive change in the tools that are used for research, diagnostics, care, and management. It's also going to drive the adoption of infrastructure for on-premises and cloud infrastructure, as well as the interoperability of that data. As Lisa Lewis-Person said, we've got to have a way for disparate agencies to be able to address disparate data sources and leverage them for insight. So that's going to fundamentally transform the underlying infrastructure and the software tools that we use to create that seamless movement of data and management of data across multiple enterprises. So we look to see a tremendous increase in the adoption of Kubernetes as an example, DevOps and DevSecOps, and those modalities of computing that facilitate that cross-cloud and cross-infrastructure movement and availability of data. And lastly, we're going to see a tremendous, the mainstream adoption of artificial intelligence and machine learning. And just as a point of reference, it was thought impossible a year ago that we would have vaccines or even a vaccine for the coronavirus. But when you take a look at the 20 to 30 years of research in virology, the tremendous amount of data that's available, and you add to that the capabilities of artificial intelligence today to help us start analyzing and understanding those things, we may have just broken through in terms of the methodology and means by which to start addressing current and future pandemics and even predict the evolution of this current virus. So all of those things are really driven by data availability, bandwidth, processing, and we see that we're going to see, to Nicholas's point, a fundamental change in the way we think about data management, data availability, and data processing as the idea between cloud and on-premises become blurred by virtue of 5G, artificial intelligence, and tremendously more powerful data processing components and compute networking and storage.
It's all fusing together. Thomas, how about at Verizon? You all are continuing trying to stay in front of these huge demand. What's it look like in a couple of years?
Yeah, so when I think about the future, I not only think about the connected healthcare devices that aren't widely deployed or even invented at this point, but I really think about what's the enabler of that. And the enabler is the network of the future. Those networks are really going to help connect everything. When I think about those, it's really a symbiotic relationship between a terrestrial fiber-based LAN network coupled with maybe a private 5G network overlay, including software-defined networking, edge computing, throw on top of that artificial intelligence software, and you've really built a network that's going to enable the future. These type of networks are really critical to enabling technologies such as smart campus, smart building solutions, hyper-precise location services, and it also gives the advantage of incredible speed of deployment of future technologies as they become available. Imagine arriving at a medical center, you enter the parking lot, and I've been to a lot of medical centers, and sometimes it's very hard to find a parking space, and you've got a smart board, which, you get a smart parking solution that helps you find a space. You pull up, you get in your space, all of a sudden an autonomous shuttle comes and ferries you to the building on campus that you're trying to get to. You walk into the medical center, an application on your smartphone acknowledges that you've arrived, it checks you in, it provides a wayfinding solution to help you find your way throughout the medical center. All of these things are going to be able to be put in place with hyper-precise location services, and it's going to require the network to do that. With the evolutions of these technologies, it's really going to allow medical centers to have sub-centimeter accuracy in regards to where things are on site, whether that's a patient, autonomous meal delivery robot, a piece of medical equipment, or even whether something has gone through the sanitation process or not. When you couple this with artificial intelligence, it really has the ability to improve patient care and allow healthcare systems to work more efficiently.
Wow, you really have painted a picture of the future. And Bill, you've been talking a lot about sort of what the overlay looks like. What can we expect in a couple of years?
So you originally asked this as lessons learned, and here's what I heard from Hassan was talking about having the pathologist in the middle of designing the solutions and supporting that process. I think what I hear here, and it's exciting to hear, is this shift from people who are managing IT, and we have to manage IT. There's no question about that. That's our jobs. Manage the capabilities, get the capabilities integrated, follow the standards that ONC helps us with, get the infrastructure in place that Pat helps us with, get the tools in place that all of you do. All of you help create. But what we really have to do is remember, and we learned this in the EHR, that we're supporting people. It's not even just human-centered design, right? You hear that, but you're supporting people. So you give them new workflows. And I've heard Mr. Flanders talk about this. I've talked about this. What went wrong when DoD first delivered the EHR? Well, one of the stories is we went out and taught people how to use a tool. What we're doing is we're changing their jobs. You have to think about what you're doing to people all the time. I think that is the #1 lesson out of all of this is what are you doing to people and how do you help support those people and what are their expectations from you? This is another people element. So when you're delivering new capabilities, there's this tendency, and there's my entire professional lifetime tendency on the IT side for people to never feel like they're done or it's good enough. And the reason I believe that they come to that conclusion is it's like having construction done on your house. You don't want to let that contractor go until it's perfect. So you're gonna hit the checklist. You're gonna go over it 8 times. You're gonna bring family in to help look for nail pops with you. But in fact, if you set a different expectation with the people you're supporting, and we heard that, we heard CI/CD, we heard DevSecOps, we heard things that improve the speed to delivery and the connection to relevance. If you create an expectation that this is going to improve every day from here forward, you're not going to have me coming in doing a massive replacement of your system again, because every partner on here is going to help drive continuous improvement in this space. And so you're going to get more. Then they accept it, they embrace it, and then we can move forward. And then the other huge insight that I've picked up, and truly this was, you guys are all smarter than me. This was a huge insight for me, and everyone talked about it today. If we go back to that automobile and that fuel supply chain analogy, we're really supporting a medical data supply chain here. And we all recognize that. We're getting the right transport in place. We're getting the right analytics in place to look at it. We're making sure, Nicholas talked about, there are fewer sources of truth, and we're getting to a source of truth, be that a federated source of truth or not, so that we can all look at the same data, or the right people can look at the same data, understand what that data, and maybe glean different insights, but not argue about what the right data is, because we have a source of truth. And then we got, Hassan creating new sources of data through the microscope. I mean, tying all of this together is just transformative for how people do their jobs. And we need to focus on the people doing their jobs. And remember, that's why we do IT. I may do it because I think it's cool, but that's not why people give me money to do it. People give me money to do it because they're trying to support patients in healthcare delivery.
Job one is to keep the patient in mind. Great outline there. Captain, what does the future look like for the Jake? I'm sure you all are cooking up a lot of things in the Petri dish there.
We are, and you can find out a lot more just coming up in a couple of weeks. We're actually going to be hosting a DoD AI symposium, June 22nd to 23rd, so you can find out all the great things that we're doing there. But Mr. Tinston's passion and Mr. Flanders, both of the Nicks and Tom, you all have reminded me that it's so important to kind of reflect on the past, especially when you're going to answer a question about the vision for the future. So I'll just make this a mention, and Lisa Lewis will certainly appreciate this. One of my mentors almost over a decade ago was the first ONC director when they stood that office up. And he wasn't a tech person, he was a physician, and he said, I'm coming here to help give information and technology to help people do their jobs better. And that resonated with me so much, because years before that, I wrote a thesis on what's wrong with Alta and Vista. And here we are, and there's someone on the line that is actually talking about putting an interoperable, unified electronic health record, deploying it for both the VA and the DoD. I mean, that was virtually impossible when I wrote that paper. And here we are talking about these amazing things. I just can't help but think that the future is, Luke, very, very bright, very bright. I think so bright, we should all be wearing sunshades right now. And what we're gonna be all doing here is, I think, bringing technology, data, and bringing those things to the people to help them do their work better. That's exactly what we're going to be doing. That's the vision for the future that I see. So
wow, great context there, pulling in that history with Alta and Vista. Pat, how about over at the health agency? What's it going to look like in a couple of years? You're going to have your contracts in place. You're going to have some of these tracks laid down. You're going to have your help desk all running perfectly. What's next? What's it look like?
Right. So, we're building the skyscraper from the bottom up.
Sure.
And so what we'll have is the key enablers will be in place. The network will be there. The electronic health record will be fully fielded, right? And now we capitalize on that investment, right? So we integrate capabilities that couldn't be integrated before because everything was distributed. Things like, a virtual video visit integrated with the EHR, or a telecritical care integrated with the EHR, and all this equipment now integrated, connected to the EHR that we couldn't connect before. And then, real utopia is that day when the first military person retires, and all you have to do in the EHR is click the button that says retired. There's no paperwork movement. There's nothing like we have today.
The ultimate easy button. Lisa, take us home. Paint a picture of the future. You sort of have been working on the future. What's it look like out there in a couple of years?
So for us, we see the future very much as all my colleagues have said. It's what they've all talked about really is the true transformation of how healthcare is delivered. And it's a transformation similar to what we saw through technology in the transportation industry, in the financial industry, and one of my favorites in how we shop. Technology has changed so much of what we do. That is what is happening in healthcare. And in the future, we will see that come to fruition, where we have true interoperability, where we have true exchange and use of data. So our health information is where it needs to be whenever it needs to be there because of FHIR-based standards and because we don't have information blocking. We will be able to have a healthcare delivery system that works for everyone exactly as it should.
Thank you very much. Fascinating show today. And I'd like to thank all of our guests for taking the time out of their busy schedules to join us for this program. And thank all of you for your federal service, all the front line workers, all the healthcare workers that have been fighting the good fight over this, this tumultuous year and change. I'd also like to thank the sponsors here for supporting us on the show. I'd like to thank the good people here at Federal News Network that make our program so successful and enjoyable. And most of all, I'd like to thank you, the listening audience out there that tune in every month. You've been listening to the Federal Executive Forum, part of the Federal News Network.